Welcome to the Family Beacon podcast from Minnesota Family Council with hosts Grace Evans and Moses Brattrud. Stay informed on the top stories on life, family, and religious freedom.
Hello and welcome to the Family Beacon podcast from Minnesota Family Council with your hosts Grace Evans and Moses Brattrud. We are thrilled to be coming back to you with this episode. I think it's going to be covering a topic that is really close to at least half of our audience's hearts, the topic of womanhood.
I think it should be close to everyone else's hearts too, though, because
men
don't want to see womanhood erased.
No, that's true. Yes. So Grace is going to be talking about that, and
but
then
you got to give them what it's about, though. We're not just talking about womanhood. We're talking
we're not just talking about womanhood, but I wanted to let you introduce it.
You have to give them a tagline like I always do. He's not used to introducing us, guys.
Okay, that's true. Grace usually does this because I usually talk more. Fair enough. Here's the deal. Recently, men, like in the last 20 years or so, men have this thing where they're like, I can become a woman. And they think they can become a woman, yeah. And so we have a particularly egregious example of that, even infiltrating makeup and personal goods brands. And like just on the surface, what a horrible example for young women and girls.
Facts,
but
man.
That's not the only problem. So we will talk about that today. And then later we'll be talking about possibly heading into a global recession, sad trombone. This is another affront to the dignity of women. Can you break it down for us?
Yeah, so basically, Ulta Beauty released this
and that's like a makeup brand?
It's a makeup brand. See, all the girls will know, but some of the guys maybe not. I think, did you know it was a makeup brand before I
have heard of it.
Okay. Yeah, I like one of the bronzers that they sell, but no longer do I like it. I
don't know what a bronzer is. I just know what the bronze age is.
It makes you look tan.
No, you don't understand. I didn't ask. Oh. I just said that I didn't know.
Toxic masculinity. Toxic.
More like toxic bronzer. Sounds like not something I would put on my face. But anyway, continue.
Okay, so they tweeted out this girlhood podcast episode where a biological man told me, a woman, how to be a girl.
Wow.
This is what they tweeted out. They said, this is like with the clapping emoji every few words. They go, trans girls can do it all. That's what they tweeted out. And then they said, tune into the latest episode of The Beauty of Girlhood, where host David Lopez sits down with guest Dylan Mulvaney, I think that's how you say, to chat all things girlhood. Heart wrapped in a birthday present emoji. Watch now. And
I hate this so much.
Like this guy, biological male, that's sitting on like the screen is wearing this red dress, and he's wearing this red bow, and he has his hair like slightly curled out like it's a blowout, and he has red lipstick on and makeup on.
How wonderful.
Right? And
Grace, what's the problem here? He's just expressing himself.
Trigger warning if you haven't already been triggered. But he says, I think like this is one of the clips has been going viral where he talks about how he knows that he can be a mom someday, and he's so excited to be a mom, literally. He said he's so excited to embrace womanhood, blah, blah, blah. And like he didn't know that when he was first transitioning, but he's so glad it's available to him now. And this is the real trigger warning. Then he says, I think I need to make it clear that like not all women have the Barbie pocket. That's what he refers to as what women are. Like, the biological reality of women, he says it's a Barbie pocket. What? And I went on and found his TikToks because he's apparently a very famous influencer. And I think I've seen videos from him before. But he's just talking about how, like, he was walking in a mall once and he was wearing, like, tight shorts, and he hasn't undergone surgery yet. I don't know if he will. And he was like, yeah, people were staring at me. He's like, but I realized I have one choice. I have two choices. I can either keep doing it, or I can keep just being myself and like making people uncomfortable, or I can like cover it up and just pretend like and like wear looser pants. And he's like, but I'm gonna embrace me. Not every girl, every woman has the Barbie pocket. So like, what, you're gonna tell me, a real woman, what it's like to be a woman? Because this is a man.
I'm sorry. I'm just trying to deal with this without like exploding. This is just so, just like, I don't know. It just makes me want to it makes me want to go home today, get my wife and kids in the car, and just drive and drive and drive until we're in the hills and live in a cabin and never, ever, ever hear about this again. And just like, does it like, I mean, I'm a city, like I grew up in the country, so it wouldn't be that weird. But now I love the city. I love civilization. But this is the sort of thing which, well, it's not civilized at all, really, is it? But it just makes you want to run as far away from here as I possibly can. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Not that this happened in Minnesota, where presumably it was in New York or some other place that all Minnesotans instinctively know is basically Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah, and what's really creepy to me about this is these are two adults, right? Two adult men that are talking about girlhood. That's creepy to me. Like two men doing a podcast on the joy of girlhood is demeaning towards women, and I was so like distraught over this that when I kept seeing this come up in my feed multiple times over the past few days, and I had like a thought when I saw it the first time. I had another thought the next time. But then I just, like, the more I saw it, the more I it was kind of like a poetic thing in my mind. Like, I had, like, a poetic kind of response. And it was starting with the basic fact that, like, these men can rent wombs, they can buy children, they can wear a bunch of makeup, they can wear all the sparkly dresses they want, they can do all these things, but at the end of the day, they are going to always be men.
Right.
Like, they are never going to be a woman.
Yeah.
They can try to do all these things to make themselves feel like they are in the right body, quote unquote.
Yeah. They will always have the bone structure, the muscle structure, the DNA of a man. They will never be able to get pregnant.
Right. And what's really sad to me is that they're doing this podcast and the whole world, well, much of the world is coming out and celebrating this, when in reality it's something that is really sad because they actually really need help. If they genuinely think, if this man genuinely thinks that he is a woman, then he really needs help. Like, to be a woman, once it was like, to be a woman means to live up to femininity. And, like, you're defined by femininity, and these are the standards you're held to. But now we are held to the standards of masculinity, which is impossible for me to attain. Like, I will never be, like, a perfect man because I'm not a man. So if we're going to, as a culture, say, like, Grace, if you're going to be successful, if you want to be strong, brave, and competent, then you need to be more like Moses. Like, I will never be able to do that, right? And Moses will never be able to. In
so many ways, that's true.
But if and the same thing applies, though. If people started trying to hold Moses to a standard of femininity, he would never be able to attain that. I'm sorry, but you're not.
I like, I'm married, and I look at my wife and everything that she is and everything that she does, and just her identity. And it's so, in some ways, it's so profoundly different than me in ways that I am still learning and growing in and trying to understand. But I will never, no matter how long I know her, I will never be able, or I will never want to, but if I wanted to, I would never be able to imitate her and be the sort of person she is. That is to say, a woman. I can't do that. There's just on a spiritual level, not to even talk about the physical things we've already talked about, a man cannot become a woman. A man cannot even really pretend to be a woman for very long and convince many people, and vice versa. And it's just so sad that we're at a societal moment, an emperor has no clothes moment, as we've discussed many times, where this is acceptable. It's truly shocking.
I think culturally, I think we're seeing a shift, at least I'm seeing a shift among my peers and among people online in, like, people not accepting transgender ideology, actually, which is a spark of hope. I mean, there, of course, are people that are lauding this clip, that are saying, like, oh, yeah, like, you go, girl, Dylan, blah, blah, blah. But there's a lot of people that are pretty shocked by it. They're like, oh, like, this is the side that I said I was on. I was just for, like, people, like, men marrying men and, like, being able to live together and have the tax exempt status, or the same tax status. I'm not for, like, this, like, a man telling me what it means to be a woman. So I'm kind of encouraged by some of the young people that I've seen responding to this on social media. And I think that there's a growing trend in trying to keep biological men out of girls' sports. I'm seeing more and more people stand against that.
Excellent.
Which is good. So a little bit of courage and inspiration, but definitely spread that video, get the word out, because womanhood is under attack. Yep. I said it here. You heard it here first. So I want to talk about some alternatives to Ulta, because I do like Ulta.
Alternatives to Ulta.
Alternatives. Yeah. Yes. So there's this one brand called Ulta Beauty, and it was launched by Amanda Ensing, and she responded to this whole catastrophe with Ulta, and she said, you can't be for women's rights but say there's no definition of a woman. You can't be for women's rights while denying the truth of what a woman is. Which is so true.
Based.
Bam, right?
Yeah.
I saw that after I wrote my script, so probably could have, like, taken some of that, even quoted her in it. But it was really good. She has her own makeup brand. She's very vocal about her politics, her faith, and she said, she tweeted out, she said, women, stop spending money with companies that want to erase you to appease a narrative, which is so true. She said, womanhood is not a costume or a feeling. You can't be, okay. And then she said the rest of what I just said. So I think that's really good that she's saying this. And that's the irony of it, is that this company that appeals to almost entirely just women was willing to go out on a limb, Moses, and like alienate almost their entire base so as to seem woke enough. Yeah. Like they were so afraid of not being in the social justice movement enough and not lauding that which the world lauds, that they were willing to trigger all these women and make us feel disgraced, displaced, and erased. That's what they did, because that's how woke they are. Yeah. There's another brand, though, that you can support. So that's Elevate Beauty. One is a faith-based beauty brand. It's called Hope Beauty, and it was created with the vision, quote, to combat the ugliness in the beauty industry. Our mission extends far beyond our retail arena. We won't stop until every woman who has heard who made her and who saved her. The gospel is beautiful and desperately needs to be shared. So that is a cool like gospel-centered makeup company, and they talk about how in our world today there's a lot of airbrushed, over-filtered models. I mean, we see it all the time. Like their self-image is distorted. They're photoshopped a lot of the time. Sometimes they're on diets, like pretty severe diets. So bad. Yeah. And even beauty companies draw inspiration from pornography and directly fund abortions. A lot of these do. And so this is a biblically branded makeup company, which I think is really great. And then there is one more, which I'm looking for the name here. It's called... blanking on the name. I'll have it linked in the description. There's an article that I'm reading from. I'll link the name of the brand in there.
So there's at least 3 brands that young women and girls can go to if they want to take their business away from Ulta and take away their business from literally a company that's
trying to erase its
own customer base, which I have to say, just from a business perspective, is such bad marketing.
Honestly. Oh. Like, did they expect every woman to watch that? A man, you can tell this is a man, dressed up with makeup and a dress. Did they expect us to see that and not be revolted and not be like, and feel like we were displaced? Like, what did they think we were all going to do? That we were all going to be like, yeah, that's us. Yeah, that's what girlhood is. Like, no.
Yeah. No, their social media accounts are clearly run by radicals.
Yeah. So, keep saying the radical, quote unquote, truth that this narrative must end, that only women can be mothers. You have to keep saying that. And men will always be men. Only men can be fathers. Like, that's the truth, and there's no changing it. That's the way God designed it. And unless you and I rise up and keep saying this truth, then we are ultimately going to keep seeing our culture spiral worse and worse. So,
I can't do this because the mic is connected to an arm, but if I could, mic drop.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Moses is a great supporter. Awesome boss.
Thank you. Can't tell if she's being sarcastic, but thank you. Thank you.
I'm not. I actually complimented him earlier when we were filming the video, and I was like, oh, I'm so glad you're the boss. And he was like, really? Like, he can't take a compliment, this dude. So tell us about the coming recession, Moses.
Yeah. Wow. Great introduction, Grace. Okay. So I want to talk about why we're talking about this. So
maybe
first of all,
the recession is that all of the assistants, the Gen Z assistants, are too ambitious. That's going to cause the recession.
I don't really know.
Okay. Anyways,
what that means. Okay. So I want to talk about why we're going to be talking about this. Okay. First of all, this is if there's a recession, that's a big deal. Okay.
Yep.
Now, for most of us have lived through one recession. Grace wasn't even born yet during the last recession, the 2008 recession.
What?
But
rude.
I was in high school. I
was also in high school. No, I wasn't.
Yeah. No. Okay. No. It's fine. We know you were like an egg, essentially.
7.
Yeah. Like I said. So when there's a recession, why would we talk about that here on a show that's focused on family values, on social issues? Well, okay, a recession very quickly becomes a social issue. It very quickly affects the abilities of families across the country and indeed across the world to put bread on the table, to educate their kids, to do all the things that we want families to thrive. Because remember, we're not just like fighting a culture war here. We want families to thrive according to God's good design. And God's good design is for men and women to be married to each other. Yes, for marriage's true definition to be honored, but also for families to just simply thrive economically, spiritually. And so we see a recession as a threat to that. And so I want to talk about why we should be prepared for that and how we can prepare for that. First, 5 signs that, in fact, we are probably heading to a recession. So first of all, the U.S. dollar is actually really strong. And that may seem like a really good thing. And it is good when, let's say, you and I wanted to go to a foreign country. No. So if we wanted to go to Europe or the UK, we would be able to buy a lot of stuff with our U.S. dollars.
Okay.
However, the dollar's strength actually creates destabilizing effects for Wall Street. So it actually makes it harder for American companies to sell their exports abroad. Because
so when you're saying that our dollar is strong, I'm just trying to track because I'm not an economics major. You're saying that like $1 in America can buy a lot of stuff in, say, China. Is that what you're saying?
And yes, the dollar is strong against the yuan, the Chinese currency. The dollar is very strong against the pound. So a year ago, a dollar was worth about £1.30, or a pound was worth about $1.30. Excuse me, no, I messed that up. I'm going to say it the first way. A dollar.
$1.30.
A pound was. Excuse me. I get so confused. A pound was worth $1.30.
Yeah.
Okay, so the pound was more valuable than the dollar in that sense. Now the pound is basically equal with the dollar. Well, there's been some really bad economic mismanagement in the UK, unfortunately. But the thing is, the dollar is the global currency of reserve. So when other banks shore up their currency by buying dollars, which increases the demand for dollars.
Aren't we the newest currency though?
The U.S. dollar is formally one of the newest currencies.
But how come we're like the fallback one then?
Because we're the most powerful country in the world, and we're like
Heard it here first.
We're like the guarantor of global trade. So
wow, so this is fascinating. I did not know that we were the fallback. Wow.
Yeah, I
mean,
it's
English
an informal.
Money to be.
It used to be for some countries.
When did this change
happen? Bretton Woods, 1945, 1946.
Oh, I thought this would be like 2012 or something.
No. The U.S. So we're talking about basically the whole economic system that's been in place since World War II, roughly.
Wow. Okay.
And
so that's the first thing.
Yeah, just because. So at that time, it was mostly just like the free world, like. The UK and Australia and France, who might buy the U.S. dollars and have that in their treasury as a backer for their own currency.
Wow.
They want their currency to be strong against the dollar. And so that's a huge deal.
That is
in some countries, actually, like even in Africa, some countries just use U.S. dollars as their currency. Wow. Because it's stable and you can believe in it, whereas...
I keep getting ads that you should like put your money into gold blocks.
Don't do that. Don't do that. Gold...
Isn't that more stable than the dollar or no?
Gold very rarely outperforms the stock market. People say that it's good during a recession, but do your own research.
It would probably have been good against inflation, though.
Well, but that's the thing. It might not be. So yeah, inflation is like we as Americans, we experience inflation. Yeah. But it's actually way worse for a lot of the rest of the world. So if we've had like 7%, 8% inflation in the U.S. year over year.
Isn't it like 20% or something?
The house, I'm not sure what it is in the housing market, but if the dollar has grown less valuable by about 8% in what we buy, well, the British pound has become less valuable by about 12, 13, 14%, with no possibility that it's going to go down. The U.S., we may be starting to see inflation go down. That would be natural if we were going into a recession. So that's reason one. Our currency is actually too strong, and that's going to destabilize global markets. It's one factor. The second item is our economic engine is stalling, specifically consumer demand. So when we buy stuff, when we shop,
Target, Hall.
Amazon, Best Buy, we basically when we spend money, that's a huge huge part of our.
But because of inflation, people
partly
aren't doing
because
that.
of inflation, yeah,
They're
yeah.
like not
so
spending as much, right?
yeah, like generally,
Yeah.
Brianna and I probably split the grocery spending 50-50 or so.
Yeah.
But like my grocery budget goes a lot less further, especially with some things like beef. It's insane how expensive beef is.
Or eggs. Eggs are so expensive.
Oh my gosh, I feel like they've gone up.
90
they've doubled.
cents
Yeah.
a year ago, or maybe a little more than a year ago.
Yeah,
and now
I paid.
Isn't it like $5 now?
I paid $5 for a dozen eggs.
Insane. I don't eat eggs
ago.
anymore because I'm like I'm not spending that much money.
I think they're like $3.69 at Aldi, which
that's
yeah.
But at Aldi they used to be less, like 70 cents at Aldi. Insane.
Yeah, so
I don't know.
Things like that could change, but
so people aren't shopping as much.
So people are tightening their belts, and that is understandable. But that's going to hurt the economy because a lot of our economy is based on people buying stuff.
Yep.
So it's a vicious circle. So because of that, businesses are going to also tighten their belts. So FedEx, for example, this is a global company. They don't just do shipping in the U.S. They do it globally. They're warning that earnings could plunge more than 40%, and that's partly because people are not buying as much stuff online. And so that's just one company. But Apple stock is falling. And
do we know why Apple stock is falling?
Well, I'm seeing here that it might be because the company was scrapping plans to increase iPhone 14 production after demand came in below expectations. So not as many people are buying the iPhone 14 because again, people are tightening their belts.
Honestly.
Well, that may be also part of it.
They're, like I have the 12 and I'm like, okay, the 13 has barely any more features than the 12. Why would I get a 13?
Right.
I don't know.
So all of that together makes it so that stocks are volatile. When stocks are volatile, people try to invest in bonds. Bonds are sort of like a stock, but for debt, for corporate debt, things like that. So if you buy a U.S. Treasury bond, you're investing in the U.S. government's ability to pay back its debts. If you're buying a corporate bond, if you're buying a bond in FedEx, then you're investing in FedEx's ability to pay back its debts. But the bond market has been in a tailspin, and that's partly because people go to the central bank. The central bank interest rates are climbing, which I have to say, like, honestly, folks, I'm not here to explain the economy to you. I'm talking about that there's a recession coming. There are people who know so much more about this than me. And you've seen interest rates going up. You've seen mortgage rates going up, and just in the way that might stop you from buying a home this year, or maybe if you are unlucky enough to have an adjustable rate mortgage, maybe it made your mortgage actually go up. Think about what that does for big companies. So maybe it means that if Amazon was going to invest in something and it was going to be $100 million of fueled by $100 million of debt, and a year ago they would have done it and they would have been paying 3% per year on that $100 million. Now they're going to be paying 6 or 7%, and they simply can't afford that. So it's really tightening spending. The last factor we've had. We just have the war in Ukraine. We have, which is really cutting into supplies. What's
like the latest update on that? Do you know?
Well, yes, I do.
Oh, let's go.
The latest update is so in the last 2 months, Ukraine has really been pushing back, and they've taken back some big areas.
Honestly, the fact that they've lasted this long and they've like actually won back territory, amazing. Yeah. Russia did not expect that at all. Go Ukraine, honestly.
Russia did not expect that. Ukraine is doing that. They're doing that with a huge amount of help from the U.S. and from other countries. Some people say that's too much. But at this point, and they're saying that's too much, possibly because it could lead to global war, which is horrifying to think about. But
it would be Russia's fault, though.
Some people are thinking that this will prompt China to invade Taiwan. Some people are thinking that Russia will use nukes and all sorts of potential scenarios.
Does Russia want Ukraine that badly, though? Because honestly, Ukraine is a tiny country. It's tiny.
Ukraine is enormous.
How come it's like compared to Russia? It's tiny. It's tiny.
Compared to Russia, it's smaller. Yes, but
Russia's like
I think it's got about 40 million people.
Okay, it's not tiny compared to some countries, but it's like Russia's this huge monster, and how come they need this little bitty chunk of land? Like, I know it's the gateway to other ones.
No, it's.
But if they attacked other countries, then America would come and smite them. So I don't know.
Well, that's true to an extent. Yeah.
Yeah.
If they attacked a country that was in NATO, like.
So, right. So I don't know why they want Ukraine, because it doesn't really make sense. I mean, do they have a lot of natural resources there?
They have a lot of natural resources, but also like until like, I don't know, maybe 1919 or so, Ukraine was part of Russia. Like it was.
How did it break away?
So Ukraine is culturally somewhat distinct. So especially in Western Ukraine, it's Catholic. I think in Eastern Ukraine, it's pretty Orthodox. There is a separate language, Ukrainian. I don't know if it's like Spanish and Portuguese, where they're like so close that you can kind of understand, mutually intelligible. But they're certainly very close. The language is close. I think they use the same alphabet and stuff like that. Then so the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, he was an actor, and he was a comedian, and he was actually in a lot of Russian language stuff because and lived in Moscow even. So there's very close cultural ties between the two countries, and there are parts of Eastern Ukraine.
But how did the country get formed?
I believe that the Soviets created it as an independent republic, which was kind of fake because the Soviets really called all the shots.
So they think that it's like they're getting it back, quote unquote.
Like, that's exactly what they think. So Vladimir Putin is doing it's like his red meat appeal to his base is we're bringing territory back to the homeland. Now he's not claiming, to my knowledge, he's not claiming all of Ukraine. He's claiming these small bits on the eastern half. Well, they look small.
So big, it's insane. And
in fact, as you probably know, Russia actually invaded Ukraine in 2014, and they never left. They just invaded this one part of the Donetsk area, and then in early 2022, as we all know, they did a bigger invasion. So the latest was that the Ukrainians have been really pushing back. They probably were behind a bomb between that took out a bridge between the peninsula of Crimea, which is a very, very strategic part of Ukraine, which has been occupied by Russia for several years. That's on the Black Sea, and it's connected by bridge to another part of Russia, and that bridge was temporarily taken out, probably by Ukrainian forces, probably special agents, kind of a Navy SEAL type of a thing. Is probably what they did. They probably came in very small boats and put shape charges on the pillars of the bridge. Anyway, this is getting into my hobby, which is foreign policy.
Honestly, this is great. I love that you know more about economics and foreign policy than me. This is fascinating.
Well, I love that you are following these issues of how people are, even this most famous makeup brands are just like
Ulta,
just giving the middle finger to other customers, because honestly,
literally,
I did not see that. Yeah.
Okay,
so we'll call that a day in terms of the economic, in terms of the war in Ukraine. But the upshot basically is that, people often talk about economic issues as like issues that people vote on, and that is a good thing. I guess I would just encourage people to look at the ticket in November and look at which candidates do you think are going to be doing a good job about bringing about economic growth, about responding to a recession, about capping inflation, about just helping the economy. Who is going to be what they call a safe pair of hands and that at the state level and also the federal level. The president is not up for re-election, but members of Congress are.
And you can download our guide to biblical citizenship at
mnfamilyvoter.com. Great promo. And I am going to be thinking and praying about this with my wife. Like, how can we respond to potential coming economic instability? Like, Lord willing, my job won't be affected, but we've all been affected in terms of our pocketbook, in terms of rising prices for gas, for meat, for all of the for things that we just need.
It is hard though, because if a recession does come, nonprofits depend fully on people giving to the causes that they care about.
Yeah, a recession doesn't necessarily mean that people will give less to charity. I mean, because certain people are very wealthy and they have plenty to give at any time. But of course people will tighten their belts in terms of charitable donations, many people. So I just want us all to pray for the future of our country and the world right now. It seems like there's a higher threat of nuclear war than there has been at any time in my lifetime.
Yeah,
that's just
that
one.
Is very scary.
Yeah, just one example of how things seem to be spiraling out of control.
Have you heard that quote that World War III will be fought with nuclear bombs we don't know what World War IV will be fought with, but it'll be fought with sticks and stones probably. Something like that. I don't know. I've just butchered that quote totally, but it's something.
No, I've heard that. Yeah, the nuclear war would wipe us out. Obviously, I mean by definition. But let's pray not only that nuclear war won't happen, but that we'll be able to weather this recession and remain strong. Okay.
Because life can be sustained there, or Mars.
I didn't know. What about the man in the moon? Does he create a problem for that?
Okay, so yeah, this is interesting. Okay,
so bored with that question.
So let's talk about what we're reading.
Yes, what are you reading?
I am reading. I read half of it yesterday. Fahrenheit 451.
Oh,
I've already read it.
Cool.
Have you read it before?
No.
So good. You would love it. Okay, it is a short story technically, so you could read it in like a day. You should definitely read it. It's definitely like 1984 vibes. If you like 1984, you'll like this. The premise, do you know the premise already?
It's like there's a fireman and it's like burning of books or something like that.
Yeah, basically, I won't spoil it or anything, but the idea is that people began to read books less and less because of the entertainment industry, because of movies, because of like comic
sounds
books,
familiar.
Right? Because of all these things. So in the society, only comic books, like pornography magazines, and like one other kind of book, quote unquote, are allowed. I forget, but there's one other. And, I think it's like trade magazines or something. And all the other ones, all the houses in the entire world, or at least like where the character lives, are entirely fireproofed. So as soon as like the firemen get a call that there's a book or multiple books in a house, then they'll run and they'll start a fire in the house, and it will burn until all the books are burnt. And the house will still be there because it's fireproofed, but all the books will be gone. And it basically follows this character who is one of the firemen, and one of the, like, there's this random girl who I think is like 12 years old, and she like meets him on his walk home, and she's like talking to him, and he doesn't know who she is, but she's like super happy, and she like loves nature, and no one does in the world, obviously. And she's like, is it true that firemen used to put out fires instead of starting them? And he's like, what? And he laughs.
You're kidding.
Yeah, he's like, you're kidding. But then he eventually talks to his boss, and his boss is like, yeah, that's true.
Wow.
So anyways, that's like the premise, but I won't give away how it ends, but it's definitely, it feels like there's strong themes of censorship, like there is in 1984. So that's a very good book. Second time reading, 5 stars this time for sure, and 5 stars the first time even. And then I think I'm reading something else. I'm reading stuff for school, and I just reread. I like to read some childhood favorites just for fun, like when I need a fiction read. And I read Ella Enchanted because it's like a princess book. Have you read it?
I did read that.
The movie is terrible, but the book is good. It's just like a good, easy read. It's kind of a riff on Cinderella, but very loosely based on it. It's a good, easy read.
Oh, funny.
So what about you?
I am reading kind of the opposite book of that, and this is, you're not going to be surprised at this. It's called The End of the World is Just the Beginning, Mapping the Collapse of Globalization.
Oh my.
By a guy called Peter Zion.
The opposite of Fahrenheit 451? Or
no, it's
Ella Enchanted, you mean?
The opposite of Ella Enchanted.
Facts.
And I think this probably makes sense to you why I was talking about at the end of the economic order, because that's exactly what this book is about. It's about...
You're a nerd, but I love having friends that are nerds.
Oh,
and I'm a nerd
thank
too.
You. Yeah, you definitely are, Grace. Do not
I'm just a nerd
claim to not be a nerd.
I'm just a nerd in different things.
Because I'm going to stop that. Stop you claiming to not be a nerd. So basically, he says 2019 was the last great year for the world economy. There's going to be a recession. And he says it's going to be so big that it's kind of going to wipe out China as a part of the world economy, and they won't really be able to recover, he says.
Well, that'll be great.
because they're demographically so they're because of the one-child policy and the sex selective abortions. Really sad.
I feel so bad for China, honestly. Like, that's for the Chinese people. I feel so bad
in a lot of ways. Yeah. So like China is, this may be surprising to people, but China is already older than the U.S. on average. Is that not insane?
Wow. Yeah, it's so sad.
Let me double check. I'm literally Googling this in real time. Yes. The average age of the United States is 38.1 years. The average age of China is 38.4. And that is huge. That means, Grace, that they are also, this is another crazy thing. The millennials, me,
you,
and anybody born between, 91 and 2005, is that right?
2008, I thought.
I don't remember. I think it's 15 years.
Okay.
So 1990 to 2008. No. Millennials is 1980 to 1995. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Millennials is 1980 to 1995. That is the largest single generation that is working age anywhere in the world. It's a larger, even though China is so much bigger, there are more American millennials than Chinese millennials.
Wow.
Which means that, and this is essentially inevitable at this point, the U.S. will eventually become larger than China by population.
Crazy.
Because China will shrink.
I mean, not that America's doing too hot either, but...
America is below replacement rate in terms of our birth rate.
But in comparison to China,
yeah,
that's what
we're
you're
at like 1.73 children per woman or something, which is bad.
That's really bad.
We need to be above 2. But China is at like 1.3 and falling. South Korea is below 1.
Terrible.
It's
South
insane.
Korea?
Yeah.
Not North Korea?
Yeah, South Korea. South Korea.
Oh.
Yeah,
what's up with South Korea?
There's all sorts of questions as to why basically every country in the world has stopped having babies. A lot of people think it's because of urbanization, basically because people dwell in apartments. Some people think it's about birth control, but most people think that's actually not the contributing factor. It started earlier, before things like the pill were widely available. It started when people started moving into big cities.
When I hear people talk about how they never want to have any kids, like what Meghan Markle, we did a podcast episode like season 1 episode 2 on like Meghan Markle being like, yeah, I'm never gonna have kids because I don't want to like carry them into this world.
Hasn't she had like 2 kids since then?
Has she? I don't even know.
What we did, they said
they only
had
gonna
2 kids
and then they
said, we're just gonna sign a pledge and not have any more.
What I was gonna say though is like, I mean, I don't have a kid, but must correct me if I'm wrong. Having children is like one of the greatest things you will ever experience, and like one of the things that will
I won't correct you because you're not wrong.
One of the things like that will bring you the most joy, and obviously you shouldn't just do it so that you can like receive joy, but that's like one of the biggest blessings in the entire world that you could have. And I would hate to like get to the end of my life and think, wow, like I've had a long life, but I never really lived. Like I would hate that.
Yeah.
I would hate to be 92 and dying and be like, yeah, I never even lived my life. Like I lived in fear, so I never had kids and I never got married because it was just not the smart thing to do, and I slept around, but I was always on birth control and like all these things. Like just imagine that's such a joyless existence, and I can't imagine giving up children because you're afraid.
Yeah.
Or because of whatever the other cause, like urbanization or whatever.
This really gets to, I think you're completely right, and it gets to that Kevin DeYoung article that we both read this week. An exceptional article.
Really
Heck,
good.
we could have talked about that for a whole podcast, but we'll share that.
Could be a bonus episode.
Yeah, we'll share that in the show notes. It's a Kevin DeYoung article.
In the wrap,
First
it was
things.
very good.
Yeah, I think we should put that in the wrap.
Wrap is our weekly email, by the way.
Yeah, if you get the podcast, if you listen to the podcast, you probably also get the wrap. And we should probably bring this in for a landing, Grace.
Yep.
I think we've talked about some really important issues today, and I'm so glad that you guys have come along for the ride. Thank you for watching and listening to this episode of the Family Beacon from Minnesota Family Council, where you can get the facts so that you can stand for truth. Remember to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, whatever you get your social media. And if you don't have any social media, that's fine. We'll send this right to your email every Friday afternoon. Thank you so much for watching.
Thanks for listening to or watching this episode of the Family Beacon podcast from Minnesota Family Council. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you're up to date on life, family, and religious freedom. You can follow us on Instagram at MN Family Council and subscribe to us on YouTube to watch our content. Get the facts, stand for truth.